So what were we discussing in the previous class?
Methods of payment.
Okay, methods of payment. I mean, we are in between of the discussion of methods of payment. So other than methods of payment, so what we have discussed yesterday, remember?
Terms of payment.
Okay, we have discussed terms of payments. Then we were in discussion of this topic, methods of payment. We have discussed quite few details, important details in methods of payment. Today, let us continue from the point where we have stopped, discuss about different menu items in the methods of payments, as well create few more methods of payments. Okay. So I'm in here in MRF legal entity. Shivakumar on call, is he? Let me give another for Vamsi. I think Vamsi is not able to join here. Shivakumar is here, right? Shiva, what happened? You shared a video in the group. Any issues with that? Shiva, you're on mute. Okay, let him. So we are discussing about different methods of payments. So methods of payments on the vendor side. So it could be multiple. So I would normally write down few here. So cash, okay, check, what we normally know, and PDC, post dated checks, you know, and then electronic is what we were discussing yesterday, electronic method of payment. Then we can also have UPI payments, prominent these days in India, most especially. Then we have CC, credit card. Few of them are using it. Then we can also have we have various different things. ACH normally. ACH is nothing but electronic, but in US they call it as ACH, or they can also call it as NACH, NAACH, like this. So ACH, mostly they'll call it as ACH only, ACH payments. And there is one type of payment called SEPA. This is prominent in few of the European countries. These are the various types of payment methods we have normally used in by different clients. Most prominent are these. Okay. So in Indian perspective, as I say, they mostly use this until here at least, or this one, credit card. That's all. So you just have to understand. I mean, all the methods of payment will work in the same way. You just have to understand the logic as well as the menu details and informations in the menu so that you can configure your own methods of payment as you wish. Okay, so we will go back to Dynamics. So where can we find methods of payments? Can somebody navigate how we can find methods of payments?
Bills payable, accounts
Okay,
payable,
accounts payable,
payment setup,
payment setup, and methods of payment is the very first menu here. So if I click on it, I can identify few methods of payment that were already created. It's loading it for me even. Here it is. Okay. These are the few methods of payment that we have already created. This is the one which I was demonstrating yesterday, electronic method of payment. We have discussed until this menu. So today let us see this menu. Okay. Normally here in this file number and today you should see the last file number that is generated today. Suppose if I go for check here, I should see the last check number that is generated here today. I think some configuration is missing and I could not see check number. Normally I should see the last file number that is printed, the last check number, and how many of them are printed today. Like 2 checks are generated, 3 checks are generated. I should see the number here today, 3, 4, like that. So I think I can only see this if I use this electronic export format, generic electronic export format. I'll come back to that point. Okay. So normally for that sake only we have this, but not usually people will go into this. If they want to see the number of checks posted today, they can also go to the check menu and see it. So that's one way. So, and coming to this posting menu. So here I can select a particular bank account which I can use for posting checks. Suppose if I select the bank account here as a one bank ICICI, suppose whenever I select the method of payment as check in the payment line, in the vendor payment journal line, automatically this bank account will be picked as the offset account. So I don't have to give the bank account first and then give the method of payment as check. If I give the method of payment as check, automatically the bank account will appear as an offset account for payment. Okay, so for that purpose, I can give ICICI here. So if I have multiple bank accounts and I can generate check through any bank account, then I can leave it over. And whenever I use the method of payment as check, I can select my own bank account there like that. So even though if I give a bank account here, I can override it at the place wherein I was normally creating the journal and generating the check. I can override it. I can select whatever the bank account I would like to. There is always a chance to override it. But if you're here, if you give it, it's just like a default bank for the check generation. That's all. Then we have a concept called as bridging posting, post dated check clearing posting. This is if we enable this, also we'll also get this bridging account enabled. So I'll just switch to post dated checks previously where we have enabled this one. Bridging posting means for post dated checks we normally use this bridging account, right? So we definitely have this bridging account in place. So if I enable this option, I'll see this bridging account here. Bridging posting, if I enable this, I'll see this bridging account on the post dated check vendor account or the vendor PDC vendor account. This particular account will act as a dummy account instead for bank account for some time until and unless the check is cleared. Till then, the bank account will not get credited on a vendor payment. This bridging account will get credited. Once the clearing is done, this bridging account will get reversed. I mean, it will get debited and the original bank account will get credited. We have seen that process already in the post-dated check. So in that post-dated check process, if system has to pick this bridging account, you have to definitely give that account here in the bridging posting, in the bridging account here in the PDC. So mostly for PDC or any other type of bridging methods of payments, we use this bridging posting. Enable this and this account will be enabled and you can give the account number here. Then this is for clearing the post-dated checks. So post-dated check clearing posting. So we have this automatic clearing right from accounts payable module, wherein we can select the post-dated check and upon the maturity date, once we click on clear, it automatically posts a journal in general ledger. We have seen that already. So if that has to work, you have to enable this parameter, post-dated check clearing posting. So it should be mandatory actually. If you are using post-dated checks, both of them should be mandatory. You should definitely use the bridging account as well. You can use this post-dated check clearing posting, so that you can automatically clear the post-dated check through accounts payable module itself. I mean, you can also see the same in accounts receivable module. There also you have that functionality to clear the matured post-dated checks on the date. So you have that same menu like you have in the accounts payable module. Okay, for that purpose only we have these three options: bridging posting, post-dated check clearing, and giving the bridging account here. So eventually, when you select the post-dated check as the method of payment option in the payment line, so automatically the bridging account will be taken as the offset account. We have seen it. So when you give the method of payment as post-dated check for the vendor payment line, it will automatically take this bridging account as the offset account, PDC vendor account. So that's how the logic works here. So you should be more careful about giving particular bridging account here. And this bank account is also compulsory actually here to give. I think in this particular version it is compulsory. I'm not sure about the latest version of post-dated check. I think it's not compulsory to give a bank account here, but I was unable to generate a check in this particular version without giving bank account here in this payment account place. So keep this point in mind, like make it that having this payment account here or the bank account here and under the PDC method of payment should be compulsory. Okay. Then we have this option called bank transaction type. So for each bank transaction method of payment, we can give this bank transaction type. Here I get PDC. So from where I'm getting this? Any idea?
We have given bank transaction types.
Correct. We have created bank transaction types in the cash and bank management module. So for every transaction that we record, we normally give what kind of transaction it is. So we have the list of transactions we have done, check payment or check deposit or electronic receipt or electronic payment. So for post dated checks, I have given it as bank transaction type as 10. So whenever I am using this method of payment as post dated check, system will automatically take this bank transaction type as 10. Okay, it will automatically pick rather than manually giving it. For check, I have given it as 04. You see check payment. So when system will automatically pick this as 04 check payment whenever I select the method of payment as check on the vendor side. But for customer side or for from the in the accounts receivable module, when we create method of payment as check, there we will give check receipt because we are receiving checks, right? So for so that's how we give the bank transaction type. So for electronic, so what do you want me to give bank transaction type here? So I have to select this one first. The account type should be bank here. When I select bank here, then only this will get activated. Other than bank, I can use a direct ledger account, but not usual because all these method of payments are directly paid through bank only, right? For cash, we will use cash method. Okay, that's okay. We'll see that part. So for this electronic payment, I am selecting this posting account type as bank, but I'm not selecting any specific bank account. I'm just leaving it over, and I can select the bank transaction type. So what is the appropriate bank transaction type here for this electronic payment transaction?
06.
Electronic payment here we have, since it is a payment, so I'll select 06 electronic payment, so that system will automatically pick this 06 when I create any transaction and select the method of payment as electronic. Okay, so that's one point with this. This is very useful during reconciliation process. We have seen it, right? Having good bank transaction types and reconciliation process, we can sort out them or we can filter them using the method bank transaction type while you are knocking off the transactions. As well as for advanced bank reconciliation also, it is compulsory that we should have bank transaction types in place for each bank transaction so that it will match both the statement data with the system data according to the matching rules that we give for this advanced bank reconciliation. Other than this, we have promissory note. We are not using promissory note, so since we are not using it, we don't have to give anything here. Mostly promissory notes are there on the accounts payable side, and bill of acceptance or bills of exchange are there on the accounts receivable side. I don't see any of the customers using promissory notes and bills of exchanges here in Dynamics. It's a multiple step process. Actually, you might have to follow 6 to 7 steps to complete this promissory note configuration as well as in order to use the promissory note posting. So it's more like bridging posting only. For promissory notes also, you'll get certain promissory notes accounts getting debited and created in between. Once the payment is cleared, you will have that bridging accounts get cleared and the bank account will get effective. It's like that. So, okay, no one will ask in interview regarding promissory note configuration. Do not worry, or neither about the bills of exchanges. Okay, so just leave it as no draft until then. So this one is only for US NFE federal, not compulsory. That is an optional selection. So you can select if you have this electronic method of payment here. You can select electronic method of payment. I don't see any electronic method of payment. I see money, check, credit card, debit card, credit store, food voucher, meal ticket, fuel card, trade, something like that. So I can select other here, which is appropriate. Coming to check, here check method of payment as check. I can select check here. For post dated check also I can select check. So I already selected it. Okay. It's not necessary, but I think this is for some external file that we export. This would work. This method of payment will normally helpful. Okay. The only for US mostly, I think this function, this particular feature. So any confusion in this menu in general until now what we have discussed? Anyone? Come on guys, let me know if you have any. If not, we'll go for this next menu.
Yeah, clear.
Okay, perfect. So let's go down. I'm going for method of payment as check and scroll to the other menu, file format. This particular menu is all about generating the file. So when we generate any payment, like we generate check payment, normally a file get downloaded, right, or printed. So in which particular format it should print can be decided here. The export format option we have. We have two ways. We can use the standard export format methods we have, or we can use electronic export format. For for using electronic export format, actually there is a new workspace in called electronic reporting. Here I think I don't have it in this. Here I have actually electronic reporting. So through this we have to download the export formats. So there are specific export formats for different countries. So I don't think it will work here in this, but let's see. So for each country we have a export format. SEPA is an export format for Europe countries. So ACH export format we have for US. In the same manner, we have different export formats for various countries, which will be there in this electronic reporting workspace. From there, you can download the package. So once you download the package, you can see that electronic export format configuration here. See, these two are downloaded actually. Credit transfer ISO 20022. So these ISO export formats are also popular. ISO IT means it belongs to Italy. ISO credit transfer, we have DE for the Dutch Netherlands as well. For Germany, we have something different. So here we have. So for this, I think we have to go to this repositories. I have to go here and I have to go to open. Not sure if this works, but let me see. So we have a lot of standard export formats where once a payment is done, a format will be exported. See, you have all these formats. So these all are export formats only. There are some uh, most of them belongs to different countries. You see Austria, Belgium, Czech Republic. So different formats again. So this is for EU sales list. Again, for these are for fixed asset related. They are not coming into this place. But for payment export formats, I think give me a second. I have this process of collapse all. I'm not seeing collapse all actually. We have this payment model. Yeah, here we have most of them ISOs. So these are the prominent credit transfer files or the export formats in different countries in Europe, Austria, Belgium, Dutch, France, Italy, Latvia. So these are the formats. For debit card payments, again, you have this format. So normally a file will be exported. So how do you use all these things? There is also Swift payments. And how to use this is you just have to select that particular format and you might have to download it from here. Somewhere we have the option here, import option. You can select this format and here you can select which one you want out of that. And then if you click on import, automatically that will show up here in the list, in the electronic export format list. So very few of them use it. But for US, they normally don't use electronic. They have this standard report. So how come we get the standard export formats and how come we get this electronic export formats is a question. For electronic export formats, I have shown you. So from here you have to download them. Electronic export format. It's not compulsory that every payment transaction that you do should be in a file or should be exported as a file like checks. So if I enable this, then I can see all the electronic format. This is for electronic export format configuration. This return format is for electronic. This remittance format is for electronic. So these three boxes. If I disable this, I see, I don't see this one enable. I'm sorry. So I have electronic here and here, both of them. So these two I have to enable if I'm using electronic export formats. If I'm not using them and if I'm using standard formats, just disable both of them and you can see this format, export format. So what are the standard formats that we have other than electronic export formats that you can see here on the setup button you have? If I click on setup button, I can see export formats like check, NACHA US, NACHA IAT US, payroll check payment. So everything have its own design. Promissory note document, a standard promissory note which we can print if you use the method of payment as promissory note. So we earlier used this check. I've selected that check and moved it on the other side because I can use it. So we can also use this NACHA US for electronic payments. So I'll also move it onto the other side. Okay, for electronic payment, I'll use this. So for this, if I save here and go back, I can see that in the list of drop down, check and NACHA. Since this is for check, I can use check format. Since it is for electronic, I can use NACHA format, NACHA US or ACH US. We have ACH in between NACHA, okay, ACH US. So as I was saying, this mostly these export formats are used to export the file after payment. Generally for check payment, once we have done check payment, right, we have getting this, once we have generated the check, we are getting this PDF downloaded, right? So that will come from this format only, US standard format. Okay, while we are generating check, we are also selecting export format as check therein during generation of check also. So that also generally picked from here only. Okay, keep these points in mind. If there are certain clients who would customize their electronic formats, so they can customize an electronic export format according to their wish, and they can enable this electronic export format and they can select the customized format. If they have customized it, that needs a little technical support. If that is customized, I can select that export format here. That will be show up in this list of export formats. I can select one of it here. There are also certain export formats that are specific for countries, which can be selected only when the legal entity address is selected as for that country. Suppose for this legal entity we have selected it as US, right? So if we select the legal entity address as a particular country, for that country, if you have any specific export form,
Jeffrey, I can't hear you.
in this, you can't hear me.
Now I can hear you.
Okay. Normally in that LCS, you have this details of bugs that are fixed, as well as your license details, as well as your environment details. Everything you can find in LCS. Someday we will discuss again about LCS topic. Okay, in detail actually. So through that also you can download some export formats. Okay, here I am not using any electronic export format. I am disabling it. I'm only using one standard export format. Okay, this written formats and remittance formats are related to this promissory notes, actually not for checks or electronic payments. Only for promissory notes we use this written format and remittance format. Okay, then this invoice update, journal name, these are also related to this one only. I mean post date, sorry, promissory notes and bills of exchanges. Okay, create post draw journal when posting invoices. This normally post a draw journal for promissory note when we create invoices. Okay, so that's one process of promissory notes, not related to us since we are not discussing about it. But keep this point in mind. If at all a file has to be exported during payment, that has to be given here, the file format. Okay, for check I have given check. For electronic I have given NACHA. So that's all about file formats. Other than this, we have payment control, one option of payment control wherein we can give certain mandatory things that has to be filled in when we are doing a transaction using one particular method of payment. Here, if I see the first one, bank transaction type is mandatory. So whenever I am using this method of payment as check for any vendor payments, I should definitely have a bank transaction type given in the journal. So we definitely have that option for bank transaction type. So that has to be entered. So I have enabled it. If user missed to enter it, he cannot proceed further with the transaction or post it, because system will keep on throwing error messages saying that bank transaction type is mandatory and you have to fill it. So here system will automatically take the bank transaction type because we have given it 0 for here, right? So if I use method of payment as check, it will automatically take the bank transaction type is mandatory. So bank transaction type is 0 for here, right? Bank transaction type is mandatory, right? So bank transaction type 04 will be taken mandatorily and it will get validated. And if you don't want this kind of validation or control, you can off it, no problem. Then offset account has the type bank is one mandatory. Since I'm using method of payment as check, for method of payment as check, I should definitely have the offset account as bank only. I should not use any ledger accounts for generating method of checks or use the method of payment as check. If I have such kind of control in my mind, I can say the system that offset account has to be definitely bank. You can't print checks or post checks using ledger account instead of bank account. Okay, so mostly we'll use bank account only, and to control the users not to use any other account other than bank account, You can give this tick this and this one. If you don't want, you can disable this. It's disabled. Isn't this disabled? It should be disabled. Yeah, it's disabled. Okay. Then I have an option where is mandatory. This is when you are trying to post a check without generating a check or without giving appropriate check number, system will not allow you to post it because it says that check number is mandatory and you are missing the check number. So we will get the check number as and when we will generate the check successfully, it will get filled automatically. We know that. We have seen the check generation process previously, the check number automatic picking. So if there is no such check number that is mandated onto the payment line, then system will not allow the user to post the transaction because I have given check number as mandatory. So the same way we have payment specification is mandatory, payment ID is mandatory, payment note is mandatory, payment reference is mandatory. So we have all these fields in vendor payment line. Payment specification we have, payment ID we have, payment note and payment reference. We have all these fields. If you give one of it as mandatory, you should definitely fill some or the other information in that field related to payment note or payment ID or payment reference. If you don't say they are not compulsory, if you don't tick them, they are not compulsory. That's all. Okay, that's the whole point of having this payment control. Any confusion in this? Anyone? No, right? Okay. So we have payment attributes as well. Payment attributes are mostly related for electronic payments only. Third-party bank account means here vendor bank account. So we normally give the vendor bank details for a vendor bank vendor when we create a vendor bank. Mostly when we electronic payments, it will automatically pick this vendor bank details for the purpose of or compulsory to be in place for the system to function properly or to task to be exported into the file, then you can give this third party bank. Payment account is also mostly related to the same vendor banks only. Payment ID related to that particular electronic payment transaction, you can enable them. We also have these particular fields in payment line, vendor payment lines, vendor payment journal lines. So here there you can fill these fields if you keep them as mandatory. If they're not mandatory, you can leave them, not a problem. Mostly payment attributes are not mandatory or no need to be having. If they have, if at all they use, they mostly use third-party bank account to be mandatory for electronic payments. Only for specific method of payment like electronic, they will use it. For remaining, there is not needed. So for this electronic payment, since it's always bank, so I'm selecting bank transaction type is mandatory. Offset account has the transaction type as bank. Okay, check number is not needed because it's electronic, right? So there won't be any check number. So check number is mandatory. I'm disabling it. I'm not using it. You can keep payment reference as mandatory also, so that you can enter some payment reference. Like when you do electronic payments, you generally get some payment reference numbers, right? Normally for UPI transactions also you'll get payment reference numbers. So in that process you can use it. Payment reference is mandatory. That's all. You can also create few more methods of payments. Like I was saying, you can select UPI. It's not come. You can select UPI here. Payment status, you can keep it as sent only. Payment type, it's other only. You can keep ledger or bank. Mostly it is bank only, right? UPI are always through bank. I can select bank and I can select bank transaction type as UPI. I have 07 as UPI here. Selected it. Export file. For now, I'm not using any export file for UPI transaction, so I'm leaving it empty. Bank transaction type is mandatory. It's given. Offset account should be bank. Okay. That's all. I can also create credit card. Like Sidhu was asking yesterday. Method of payment as CC. Description. Credit card. I can select it here as sent only. Payment type, I'll select it as other. Same. Using account type should be bank in case if we can create a separate bank account for credit card. Giving the credit card details, we can create it as a bank account and you can use the same bank account here, credit card bank account. Like ICICI SBI, you can create one credit card bank account and you can assign it here so that transactions related to credit card will mostly be posted into that particular bank account. That one that is there for credit card mostly. Okay. You can give one here. Do we have credit card? I think we have credit card here, 08. Yes. And I'm not using any export format. Here I can give this one, federal as credit card, method of payment. Then I can give bank transaction type is mandatory. Offset account has the transaction type bank. And so I only give bank transaction type is mandatory. That's all. So this is how I can create my other methods of payments. I can create any more if I want. If they want specific export format, they can select it here. Or if they have any configured electronic export format, they can enable and select it here in this list for any specific payments. Okay. Other than this, as I told you, you have ACH payments most prominent in US. The ISO payments also there, prominent in US. Sorry, Europe. SEPA and ISO are prominent in Europe. Okay. So these are the various types of methods of payments. And let me know if you have any doubt until here.
No.
Okay. So we can also set up payment fee. One of the important functionality we have here. Whenever we are generating check, if you want a payment fees to be applicable on the check, you can set up this payment fee setup here. For this, actually, you need to do little more configuration. You have to configure this fee ID and the relation and all details, how much percentage of or how much amount of fees you would normally collect. So that fee ID, you can click on view details and go here. If not, you normally have it here. I mean, in accounts payable, you can directly configure that payment fees here. If you configure, the fee ID will automatically come here in this place. Or if not, it will automatically take you. If you click on view details, it will take you to payment fee page only. Here you can create one like payment fee ID 01. So you can write it as check fee. Fee. You can give a vendor or ledger. Mostly we will not select vendor because if you want to charge it on vendor, it will directly get charged on the vendor. Suppose if you are giving 1000 rupees check and there is 10 rupees fees on the check, then it will directly get charged to the vendor. So that vendor only will pay that amount. So through our bank, 1010 will be deducted, right? Normally. So we can give it onto the vendor so that we will deduct that 10 rupees and we'll pay the remaining 990. The 10 has to be 10 will come under bank charges and that we will retain with from the vendor, or it will deduct from the vendor payment itself. The check will be sent for 990. $10 will be taken by bank like that. Or if you want it account separately into another ledger account fees, you can give that bank fees account here. So we have bank fees account. I think bank fees are charges. I can give it here. Journal type, I can use normal daily journal only, or I can use vendor payment journal, anything I can use. I'll use daily journal for such kind of fee posting. Your wish, you can select any other journal type also. So here in this, again, I can select payment fee setup. I can select, I can link method of payment to payment fee, or I'm going back again. I'm going back to method of payment check. I'm going to payment fee setup here again. I can select the fee ID. I can select check fees. I can select table or group or all. Is it for all banks or is it for a separate bank? If it is table means I can select a single bank, or if it is group means I can select a group of banks. I have bank groups, right? ICICI group, SBI group. So for all the bank account that fall under ICICI group, this fees will be applicable. Or I can select all means for all the banks. There is no selection. Whatever the bank accounts are there, whenever we generate check, we'll get that $10 fees. So the $10, how we know system knows $10 is here. You can give either percentage or amount. If I give percentage means I can give 10%, means on the check amount 10% will be deducted. How much of the check amount is, upon that 10% on the 10% will be charged as a bank fees. Or you can give a standard amount, like, so I gave amount, so I gave 10 means $10 will be the standard amount, not percentage. Okay. I also have intervals. I'm not sure why this is used. You can pay this fees payment in intervals also, I think. That's all. You can give the fee currency here, US dollar, right? Mostly US dollar, US dollar. You can give any currency according to that particular country. So here our currency is US dollar, right? So I gave it. So payment specification we have, you can define one if you want to. Payment currency also you can give as US dollar if you feel to give. That's all. So whenever you do any check payment, automatically this $10 fees will be posted. I mean that particular account will get debited the fees charge account that we gave here, bank charges account, and bank account will get credited with the $10. This account will get debited. Okay, this is one way of maintaining fees on check transactions. Not compulsory that they will have fees, but if there is anything and you have to maintain it separately or account it separately into different account, I can give it like this here in the payment fees setup.
I have
Let's
one
see how it
question.
works later when.
Jaipurkar.
Yes, Bala.
Usually I've seen that like in normally in hardware shops, what they do is that if at all we are paying by debit card, they say that like 20 rupees charge will be levied. Like
Correct.
yeah, I mean, is there
So
any? Yeah, yeah.
in that case, you can give the payment fees for. Suppose if I'm using debit card in any payment, they'll charge 2% fees on it.
Mm-hmm.
Mostly in a lot of shops. So that
Yeah.
additional 2% fees you can configure here as payment fees. That's all. Okay, that's all. So on the payment amount, how much our payment you do, 2% will be calculated. For that, you can use this as percentage and you can give 2% here fees amount. Okay, that's also one way. So clear this, that would be all that we have in methods of payment. Learn until here, this is more than enough. If somebody asks you, mostly they in interview, they will ask you these things only related to period or related to status or related to post dated check configuration. That's all. Okay. Work on it, I mean configure it and do let me know if you face any issues in this. Or if you have anything now, you can ask. Okay. If not, we'll go to the next topic on our course. Vendor groups. We'll see the overview of what is a vendor group and how we can use vendor groups. Clear, guys? Can I go to next topic? I need a response. Come on.
So actually, I have one doubt.
Yes, please.
So in a bank, you have given the you said that either we may give a vendor or ledger, right?
Yes.
So if we give the ledger, the bank another I mean bank account we have sorry, a bank fee account or charge account we have to give, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Correct. Here. So what happens is this account will get debited, bank account will get credited.
Okay, when we give the vendor account, when we give the vendor, then also we have to give this main account.
No. For whichever vendor we are generating that check, that vendor account will be debited with the $10 and our bank account will be created with $10.
Okay.
Okay, suppose if the check payment is for 1000, so the $10 amount will be taken from the 1000 only. So if the bank automatically charge that 1000 within that, $10 charge within that 1000 only. Okay, it will only give the vendor 990. $10 it will take from that check amount only. Fees amount. It will not be burden to us. It is a burden to the vendor. That's all.
So the entry will be posted for $1,000,
Okay.
right? The entry will be posted for
In our
$1,000.
system, it is posted for
Your voice is
1000
not
only. The
audible
payment,
actually.
but vendor will be paid by bank. Okay. Is it the same for everyone, guys?
Yes, JP.
Hello.
Yes, JP.
Okay. There's a break in my voice. Is it audible enough?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what happens is, if you have 1000 rupees check that you are sending to vendor, bank will deduct 1000 from the bank account. So, but 10 bank will take and 990 it will give to the vendor. So it's a loss to vendor, $10. The fees will be credited to vendor. levied on the vendor itself. If I do it like this, bank will pay 1,000 to the vendor, but $10 fees will be charged to my account. Totally 1,010 will be deducted from my bank account. There in the original bank account. I mean, in the from the bank.
Okay.
So $10 bank will take 1,000 original payment. It will pay to the vendor. It's like that.
Okay.
So most of them will account it separately only, not levy on the vendor, because no vendor will be ready to accept the fees on checks because they need their appropriate amount. So if it is your choice method of payment, then you have to bear the charges. That's what they feel like. So anything else other than that? Anybody? Okay, wonderful. There are nothing. We can go for next discussion. Vendor groups. So vendor groups, what kind of vendors we have in business? So why do we have this concept called as vendor groups, and why do we have to group the vendors? So does anybody have any idea how we can group the vendors in business?
Group by type or group by nature of transactions, or group by type of method of payment, or
Correct. So this categorization or grouping differs with perspective. Okay. Client might ask you to group their vendors according to their location, like domestic vendors, foreign vendors, or local vendors, Europe vendors, US vendors, like that they can group. Okay, or else they can group the vendors according to the material that they supply. So vendors are also called as suppliers, you know, right? So according to the material they would supply. In business, normally there can be a lot of vendors who would supply raw materials. There can be 4 categories of raw materials. For example, raw material 1, raw material 2, sorry, we call spare parts is one raw material. And another one we call tires, suppose. For example, if it is a car manufacturing company, someone who would supply iron is iron vendor. Someone who would supply tires is a tires vendor. Someone who would supply other things like bolts, nuts, or any other electronic equipment, that can be grouped into electronic vendors who would normally sell other goods, electronic goods related to car cable or anything. So we can differentiate our vendors according to the nature of the goods that they supply. In that way also we can group them. Or else we can also group the vendors according to the method of payment we have. You know, right? Check payment vendors or electronic payment vendors. Not mostly they'll prefer to group their vendors according to the method of payment, but there is a chance to. And few of them will also create employees as vendors in most of the companies to generate checks as well as to make lot of payments. They'll generally create employees as vendors, and for every month they'll post invoice with for the salary, and they will make a payment transaction to settle that invoice every month. So you can also create a group called as employee group for in the vendor groups. In the same manner, coming to hospital business, you will have a lot of vendors. So someone who would supply medical equipment, someone who would supply electronic equipment, someone who would supply furnitures, someone who would supply someone who can be considered as employees. In that employees, you can have list doctors as employees, nurses as employees. So you can create different groups. So this differentiation or creation of groups all depends upon client's business process or how client would want to differentiate their vendors. So you have to understand it from the client and you have to group the vendors or create the vendor groups accordingly. Okay. So that's the whole concept of vendor groups. So we'll see how we can create different vendor groups in Dynamics or different options available for creation of vendor groups. Okay, clear guys until here what we have discussed, grouping the vendors for all of you.
Yeah.
Okay. Then I'll go in here, MRF. So I'll go for accounts payable. In accounts payable, under vendors, I have vendor groups. Accounts payable, vendors, vendor groups. This is the navigation. Accounts accounts payable, vendors and vendor groups. Click on vendor groups. I have created previously one vendor group since to make some vendor payment journal. So I have created a vendor group. Vendor group is compulsory. You should have vendor groups compulsorily created, because when we create a vendor, we should definitely tag a vendor group to that vendor. So to tag that vendor group to the vendor, you should have your vendor groups created in first place. So you have to create here. So I've created one as domestic vendor group. I'll create one more here, 02 as foreign vendor group. Foreign vendor group. Here I have few options. Terms of payment. I can give a default terms of payment to the vendor group. Suppose I can give it as net 30 days. So if I give it as net 30 days, for every vendor that I create and tag this vendor group, I should definitely tag one vendor group to each vendor that I create. Suppose if I tag this vendor group 02 foreign vendor group, this terms of payment by default will be applicable to that vendors. So for all the vendors which are under vendor group, foreign vendor group, net default terms of payment will be net 30 days. Okay, again you can override it for each individual vendor. If you want to change it to net 15 days for one specific vendor under vendor foreign vendor group, you can change it manually, no problem. But if I give it here for the vendors that I create under vendor foreign vendor group, this terms of payment will by default be taken automatically. Okay, remember that point. So I gave net 30 days. For domestic vendors, you can give any other like net 15 days, net 10 days, your wish. You can create and you can give net 15 days or net 5 days, or you can leave it over, so that for each individual vendor you create, you can give it manually there itself. So when you tag domestic vendor to the vendor, domestic vendor group to the vendor, no, you won't get any default terms of payment. You have to give manually, or you might leave it no if you don't want it. Like that. Then I have one option, time between invoice due date and payment date. Select a term of payment to describe the typical time between the invoice due date and payment date. So this is for grace period. Normally your due date will be net 30 days, means if due date will fall after 30 days, right? So if you have any grace period like 2 days or 3 days, then you can give that grace period here. You can also select another terms of payment like net 5 days I have suppose. So it will be grace period 30 days plus another 5 days. So that I can give specifically for a group of vendors. This option I can see only for vendor groups only. For individual vendors, I don't see this option. Time between invoice due date and payment date. Grace period. So if you don't want any grace period to be considered, you don't have to give anything here. Normally you don't have to give anything. Leave it as empty. Okay, that's the option we have. Other than this, I have default tax group. I can give a default tax group to this vendor. We'll discuss this concept of sales tax groups when we discuss the tax module. Since we do not have any tax groups created, I don't have anything to select here. But if I select a tax group here, 1 second guys, it will by default be moving into the vendors that I tag this group to. If I tag foreign vendor group to that particular vendor, the same default sales tax group will be applied to that vendor. If I give it here, that sales tax group. So we'll discuss more on this concept during tax module. Okay. Exclude from search results is one option we have. This is when we are creating any vendor, we have to tag the vendor group to that vendor. Definitely. So in that you will see the list of vendor groups, like 4 groups. If you have, you will see all the 4 groups. You can select one of the group, appropriate group for tagging it to the vendor. If you want it to be excluded from that list, suppose it will be there, but you can't use it because it won't show up in that list. Only the remaining 3 will show up. If at all, we can hide it for time's sake. If you don't want your users to create any vendors for foreign group, you can exclude it from creating, or it won't appear in the search results such that user also cannot pick it for creating the vendor. So they can't link it to any particular vendor, new vendors. That the old vendors that are created under foreign vendor group will remain same. But for the new vendors, this will be excluded from the search result. That's all. I'll enable it because I want to use it. Okay, that's the few options we have in vendor groups. Other than this, we don't have many. I can create few more like 03 I can say local vendors. Local vendors means, you know, within my state, I would say. So where I can calculate CGST and SGST separately. But for domestic means other than local means I have to calculate IGST maybe. Then I can create 0 for employees. Okay. Employees also as vendors I can create. I can also create tax vendors that I'll create during tax module. Okay, I'll come back and I'll create another group as tax vendors group and we'll tag it to the tax vendors. Okay, fair enough. These are the 4 that I've created: domestic, foreign, local, and employees. Clear? This one pretty much easy, not so complicated. Good guys, understood? If it is if you understood this, I can move to the next topic of creation of vendors. Okay. Well, okay, I'll take your silence as confidence then. Then we'll create some vendors. So these vendors or understanding vendor mastery is a big concept. Today we roughly create vendor. Tomorrow we'll understand more details about what are the different options under vendor. Okay, I'm here in accounts payable module. Vendors and all vendors is what I have where I can create the vendors. Accounts payable, vendors and all vendors. Accounts payable, vendors and all vendors. Click on all vendors. Takes a while to load. Here I have one vendor, MRF001. Okay. So it's all up to your way. So how do you want to number your vendors? If you want same number pattern for all the vendors, like for domestic vendors or foreign vendors, for any vendor, if you want the same format, you can follow the same format: MRF001, MRF002, 003. Regardless of the group that you select for the vendor, you will get the same pattern. But if you want the vendor account codes to have unique pattern according to the vendor group, suppose for domestic I want vendor domestic 001. For foreign I want vendor foreign 001, like that. So that you have to give manually. Okay, you have to give the vendor account manually or the vendor code manually. How I can get manually or how I can get these numbers assigned automatically is you have in accounts payable number sequences you have, right? And the setup here we have one number sequence for vendors. So that will decide how these numbers can be picked. You can give manual and you can normally give manual numbers here. Or you can, so in business usually they will give manual numbers to the vendors according to the group. For domestic they will go with vendor domestic 001, vendor foreign 001, like that. So here in the accounts payable parameters, number sequences, first number sequence I have is vendor account. You can see here. Here I can configure with view details. I mean, I can right click here and click on view details. Here I can see MRF 6 digits. So MRF 6 digits is what I'm using, right? So here it took automatically MRF 001. Since I'm not using continuous, it is taking 11 here, but I can use 2 here. Click continuous 2. So if I create one more vendor now, suppose if I just click on new here, it will automatically take the number. As you can see, MRF11 it is taking, sorry, it's not saved. I think I'll just delete it and create one more time. Okay, I only have one vendor. Now I'll save this here. Something cannot edit a record. Record has been updated by another user. Okay. Come on. Give a second, because I have been in this place and created one vendor and deleted. This is showing that error message. These are the kind of bugs we have in system. Get stuck somewhere. Go back to number sequences again. Go to vendor numbers, vendor account, go to view details. So if you want a different format rather than MRF, if you want it vendor 001, you can change it. Remove this MRF here and you can give VEN and you can give 6 digits, so that vendor will be created with that name. So I'll remove this here, the company name. I'll give it here as VEN like this. So I'll give the next number as 2 only, because I'll change that number in the vendor number. Okay, the other one. So I'm giving it as continuous. I changed it to VEN and I change the next number as 2. Okay, I'm saving it. Go back and save the parameters as well. Now if I refresh here and I'll create one, it's next vendor. So let's see what number it will take. If I create new vendor, see automatically took vendor 002, VEN 00002. That is coming from here in the number sequence that we have changed, right? So from there system will automatically take this. Suppose if you want to give it manually, like for each group you will use manual numbers, then you can choose the option here as manual. So go to view details. You can choose this option as manual rather than continuous. If you choose manual, what happens is you can manually enter the number, whatever number you want, you can type it. System will not bring any number here. Suppose if I delete this, I'll delete 002. I'll once again create it. Don't worry. Now I have only one vendor, Maruti Suzuki. Okay. Here I am giving it as manual rather than continuous. Once I give manual, continuous will get disabled. Okay. Only manual. So I'm saving it here. If I save it here and go back and save it here, and if I go and create the vendor now, I'll refresh here. It's here also. Now I'll create new vendor. See here, this number is not coming automatically. This new record. So why it's not showing? If we can, I have to fill it, right? It's not showing it. I'm sorry. Should generally give you the blank. 1 second. Did we miss anything other than that? Manual in use. Okay. Manual. Okay. If it is manual means there is no use of other one. So there is no pre-allocation as well. Nothing. All good. So all vendors. I'll also go back and come back to the page once again. Okay, let me save it. Go back, save it. Here, I'll try to create new vendor. Okay, it's not allowing me. Let me select one vendor or give a vendor name just as test. And let me see for group I'll give cancel. I can give one group here as domestic group only. Then save it. Vendor account must be filled. Of course, I know vendor account must be filled, but vendor account field is not editable. Sees like some issue here in this, but normally we'll get this empty field like here. You have entered name, right? In the same manner, you can enter the vendor account number here, like vendor 001, vendor domestic 001, vendor domestic 002. As you wish, you can follow a pattern. Normally they'll have 10 or 15 vendors and they'll keep it in an Excel file and they'll import it. There is a process for importing the master data. This is called vendor master data. So for importing all these things, we normally have a process. So through that you can do it. Or else normally when you create, you should get that blank field, but I'm not sure why it's not showing up here in this version. I'm changing it back to manual once again. Sorry, continuous once again. Stopping that manual and changing continuous. Okay. And I'm giving the number back to 2 so that if I create vendor, I'll get 2 only. Save it. No. Create. And so I'm saving it. So I'll go here, go back to this page, and I'll create one more vendor here. So to create a new vendor, you normally have to click on new. If you click on new, it will automatically take vendor 002. And the most important thing is the compulsory fields you have here. See, this field is compulsory since it is already picked. These 2 fields are compulsory. The name of the vendor and the group of the vendor is compulsory. Since they are highlighted in red color, you can see. So give the name of the vendor as Sahara. Okay, I'm just giving it as Sahara. So whenever it sees any related name, it will show up. If there is any vendor created in any legal entity with Sahara, or if there is any legal entity name in our list of organizations as Sahara, it will show all those details. Normally it is saved in a page called global address book. From there it will show the matching things. If there is any customer by names R or vendor by names R or any legal entity in our organization by names R, it will show. Normally this one Sahara and Co is the legal entity that I have in my organization. I have one more legal entity, just like I have MRF, I have Sahara also. So that is showing if it is a matching, if it is both of them are same, or if it is showing any vendor name here rather than I mean, you would say like rather than legal entity name, if it shows a vendor name which is created in other legal entity, if both of them are same, you can select use match so that both of them will be linked, or generally system considers both of them are same vendors here and there, but not most of them will prefer to match them. There is no benefit like that in a global address book. It will say both of the vendors are same, just that you have a different vendor number here and another vendor number there in the other legal entity according to that legal entity format. That's all, but the accounting will be different only. Here it is different, there it is different. I'm not using match here, I'm just canceling it. I gave it as Sahara. Then the important thing is select the group. So which particular segment or group that this vendor falls into. I can select this as domestic vendor group and I can save it. So these are the few details that are enough to create a vendor. So vendor number 002 Sahara is created. So other than this, there are a lot of details that has to be filled in: vendor contact details, address details, as well as remaining details, which are specific for finance. We will discuss tomorrow. Okay. So this is how we normally create a vendor. Just vendor number will be picked from this accounts payable parameter, this vendor account base, and vendor name you have to give and vendor group you have to give. And if I go back, I can see it as MRF one vendor, vendor number 2. I want to change the number for this vendor actually as vendor 001. So I can change it. Normally, don't prefer to change the numbers once there are any transactions for the vendor. If there are transactions, don't change it. But if there are no transactions, there is a process to change this actually. We have these options and we have the option called record info. If I click on here, I can use this option as rename. And I can give the new vendor name as vendor 001. So this name will be changed to vendor 001. Most of the places where I have posted transactions, in all the tables where that particular transactions and vouchers are posted, everywhere this will be replaced. This vendor name will be replaced with this one if it works properly. If it does not work properly, there are chances of data corruption. That is why I'm saying for the vendors for which you have transactions posted, do not try to change the numbers codes like this. Okay, it will take some time because there is a lot of data for this vendor. We have posted multiple payment transactions, right? So for all the transactions, it will automatically change the vendor account number from vendor MRF 001 to vendor 0001. Okay, it will take some time. So normally don't prefer this method, but there is an option. I just want to show you since I have time. So that's all. It will automatically get updated after a while. If there are no data, it will usually get updated quickly. But since I have transactions, it have to change for every transaction that is posted previously. So it takes time. Okay, not only for vendor accounts, for any master data, if you want to change the name or number, you can use that options and record info and rename. Okay, but prefer to use it only for the accounts which does not have any transactions or which does not create any impact in business. Okay, if users get usual to one particular vendor, MRF 001 is the vendor name for Maruti Suzuki, and every time they create transaction, they will go and search with the same vendor code. And if you rename it, the used vendor name, if you rename it, they'll get confused why this vendor code is changed. So that is why do not do such kind of renames in the existing details or the details that are already used or being prominently used in the business. Okay. So that's all. Tomorrow we'll meet up again to discuss about create more vendors and discuss about various menus available under the vendor. That's also an important part to understand the menus. So once after that, we will discuss our next topic of tomorrow, vendor posting profile. That is also really important. So after vendor posting profile, that is all will be the end of configurations. We have few more called charge codes. We will discuss it later. So vendor posting profile should be the end of configuration. Later we will go for some what I would say, process activities. We'll go for invoice journals, vendor invoice journals, and vendor payments, and how to settle them. We'll see that. Again, after coming to purchase order part, we'll go with charge code configuration because charge codes are mostly applied on purchase of goods only, purchase or sale of goods. We'll see that then. Okay. So vendor reasons, reason codes configuration is a small topic. We'll see if we get to time tomorrow. We'll see that topic. We have a lot of topics to discuss. Process activities are most important in accounts payable, and understanding these configurations and logics behind it, we can relate them to process activities that we would do going further. So if you understand the accounts payable module properly, accounts receivable module will be simple. I mean, most of them would be the same common factors, and so all are relatable only. When we understand these properly, activities in accounts receivable also could be understood easily. Okay. So it's a very important module, as I would say, in the perspective of interviews as well as in business. Learn it properly or focus, give some more attention and time for this module. Okay. Let's see if the record name is changed. Yeah, it's changed. Now you see Maruti Suzuki is changed to vendor 001. If I go for any vendor transaction, vendor and transactions, let's see, we have few payment transactions for this vendor. I guess lot of them. Suppose if I go for this and I go for voucher, in voucher usually I don't have vendor account. It generally shows the bank. Then I can go for original document where it is posted originally. I mean, it will generally take me to the journal where it is posted here. Go for view details where the journal is posted. It should be a vendor payment journal. Yeah, it is vendor payment journal 43. I can go to lines to see it. Oh, it's taking time. Oh, see here. Earlier, when we have done this transaction on this particular date, the account name we have selected is MRF001. But here also in this line, it automatically got changed to vendor 001 after renaming it. Mostly it will change in every place, like everywhere we have used that, it will rename it. But if since it work properly, it will work. If there are a lot of transactions, there are chances of data corruption. If it changes for some accounts, some lines, and some tables, and if it miss something, then it will be a very big issue in business. So that is why I'm saying not to rename the already created vendor names or customer names for which there were transactions created already. Okay, but here in this example, it worked successfully. So that's all, guys. I will stop recording until here. If you have any doubt, do let me know.